Hello and welcome to The Long Couch. My name's Carl. I'm joined tonight by Mel.
I may or may not be wearing pants right now. It's up for you to decide.
And on tonight's episode, we will be discussing needlessly sexualized characters.
Wow.
Bit of a mouthful.
I really thought that you were really hammering it in with last episode, but this one is even more.
So sometimes in movies or games or certain media, there are characters that just seem to be sexy for no good reason. And on
I suppose
tonight's
so.
episode, we will be discussing, is their sex appeal needless or is it justified?
Oh, so we're the arbiters of whether or not the sex appeal is okay. Okay. So we get to decide that.
That's right. On this show, we make the judgments.
I would say, yeah, that's a heavy responsibility for me to take.
So I picked some characters that were kind of up in the air because I could have spent all day picking out like dead or alive beach volleyball characters and saying, yeah, these guys are too sexy.
Yes, that is true.
There are a lot of examples of characters that are just like blatantly sexy for no good reason other than they look good or they're appealing to like a male or sometimes female demographic.
Okay, so we're subverting those. We're getting rid of those obvious ones, and we're getting a little more nuanced with our discussion.
Yeah, we've got some that are kind of questionable. So
Oh,
we can
okay, cool.
decide whether, them being sexy is actually crucial to their character or justified or if it's just totally needless.
Oh, okay, cool.
So we're going to look at movies first.
Okay.
So I picked a few from WatchMojo.com, a very reliable source which I will probably be drawing from more in the future. They put out a list called Top 20 Needlessly Sexualized Female Movie Characters.
This is from Watch Mojo. Hell yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So,
Everyone's favorite list channel.
yes. I picked out a few characters there that I thought might be good discussion pieces. So first up, we have Lilu from The Fifth Element. This is one of my favorite sci-fi movies. Have you seen this one?
I actually haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, they've got a little bit of a synopsis here, which I'll read. Sure, if we were building a woman, we may choose to model it after Mila Jovovich too, but this isn't weird science. In this sci-fi action flick, Jovovich plays Lilu, one of the supreme beings of the universe. Her main two outfits consist of a series of bandages that reveals more skin than they cover, and a crop top with tight pants and suspenders that wrap around the crotch. We get that you need a sexy female lead to play alongside Bruce Willis, but did her character really need to strip naked in front of everyone?
Um.
So
Okay.
we can see her
Okay.
below, and she does have
Thank you
two
very much, Watch
outfits.
Mojo.
Yes. So they're questioning, is she too sexy? Why is she dressed like that? Why did she have to have a nude scene in this movie?
Yeah. So I haven't seen The Fifth Element, right? But I would say, and I think this just comes down to sex scenes in general. I think that it's easiest to gauge like the necessity or like maybe even just the tastefulness of like sex appeal or a sex scene in a movie when you kind of like look at the context that it is sort of surrounds it. I've never seen The Fifth Element, so I
Okay.
have maybe this is just a super sexy movie and she's only a single facet of a multifaceted sex appeal.
You're kind of on the money there.
Oh, really? Okay, so this is a very sexy movie in general?
Well, I could lay it out for you, all the context, and you could come to the conclusion, is she too sexy for this movie?
I'm looking at this outfit. Not we'll get into the like weird sort of bandages thing. But I'm looking at this outfit with the sort of like the jock strap sort of suspenders,
Uh-huh.
and the pants, and whether it's cool. That's a cool outfit, and I
Yeah?
think if something is cool like that, then I feel like immediately I'm just like, yeah, no, I see no problem. That's badass. That's a cool fucking outfit. Is and that's not really too much skin showing. The bandages, I have no idea. You say that she's a supreme being of the universe, so I can only imagine that to some extent she is not only omnipotent in some way, but also not human.
Yeah, so she is a some kind of extraterrestrial supreme being, and what happens is that she gets like reanimated from I don't remember exactly, from like a pile of bones or a skeleton. Like they recreate her entire
Oh,
body from like rubble, basically. So that's why she is naked or covered in bandages in the beginning, because they literally just like created her and she's not wearing clothes.
okay.
So I think that kind of explains that, right? Like, why would she
Yeah.
just be wearing clothes when you just kind of, reconfigured her right there?
Yeah, well, you could also make the argument that sort of conventional or traditional attire isn't like applicable or doesn't apply here. I mean, think about it this way. Maybe more indigenous peoples. A lot of the time, like I've seen like documentaries where like the clothing they wear is very like the garments are very loose, and they wear very minimal clothing because nudity is not something that has necessarily been stigmatized as heavily in their cultures. Dicks swinging through loincloths, and completely topless for everybody, right? But nobody gives a shit because it's not a stigmatized thing. So my argument could be, and this is somebody that has not seen The Fifth Element, starring Bruce Willis and Mia Jovovich from 1997. But maybe as a supreme being of the universe, the typical conventions of clothing may not need apply.
Yeah, when she's born, she doesn't even speak English or
Yeah,
anything. So she's
yeah.
basically primal. Like, she doesn't care about clothing.
Yeah, why? So whether or not, and obviously, I'm sure it's played for sex appeal, whatever. But I'm just saying that yeah, in this case, Supreme Being reborn does not speak a language that we know, very primal, very innate nature. I would say, my humble opinion, that it makes sense, and the suspenders are still fucking really cool. I'm just so down with that outfit.
One of the things I love most about this movie is the style, and part of that is the fashion. So everybody in this movie dresses like super extra.
Yeah, I do. I'm so down for that. I
There's
love that.
like androgynous clothed characters that are overly sexy. There are like sexy stewardess characters that are like they're like Las Vegas kind of stripper stewardesses, but they're just
Okay.
like general, flight attendants.
Yeah, well, I think that may be one of the things, and I'm sure this will probably just be a repeated motif throughout this episode. But I think that a big thing is that a lot of people have a sort of, and not everyone, but a good amount of people have sort of associated sex appeal with like a negative thing. Like, oh, it's negative that this movie is using sex appeal as an attractive or appealing sort of part of the film.
Hmm.
But it doesn't always, like, it's not always a negative thing, like, I mean, like, for media, like, for example, like with The Fifth Element, you say it's very stylish. It's, like, sex and sex appeal, like, can be part of style, can be part of fashion.
It
And
is
so I
very
don't think it's
sexy.
again. So it's I think sometimes in some situations, case by case, it's okay to look at something and be like, that is made for sex appeal, but that is also okay.
It's thematically consistent.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there are like sexy male characters or like really attractive or handsome male characters, and there are like other sexy characters that just kind of dress like this just because that's just how you dress in this time, apparently.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of sci-fi tends to lean towards that too. Like you get into the future, or like this like near believable future, kind of like cyberpunk-esque, and
Mm,
things are super stylish and slick. And a lot of the time, with that appeal also comes like sort of this risque sense of fashion and sex appeal in that.
right. Cyberpunk is supposed to be kind of like sinful and deviant, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And
This constant stream of nightlife.
Lilu here is supposed to be the perfect being. So, like, okay, she
Oh,
has to be attractive, and she has to also be appealing to the main character because she's the love interest. So,
wow, the perfect immortal supreme being of the universe is also the love interest. Talk about a
how can you
twofer.
not fall in love with her?
That is a good point. If this is like a perfect supreme being in the universe, I feel like it's just like it's over.
And of course, you hire Mila Jovovich for her face. So she's not like overly sexy, like in the sense that she's like super busty and has a fat ass or something. She's just kind of like she was born naked,
Wow.
and this is what you wear in the future. All right, let's move on to another sci fi property. We're going to talk about Princess Leia from Return of the Jedi.
I have
So
a lot to say about this one.
We're specifically talking about the chainmail bikini thing she's got going on.
Yeah, the slave outfit.
Yeah. What's up with that? Why did they put that in there, huh?
So
Who was that for?
this is interesting because I first watched Star Wars when I was like 5 or 6. Like I got into it super young, and I loved Star Wars my entire childhood. And so this one was actually this is an integral part of my childhood, very formative movie for me. And when I was younger, I was always like really uncomfortable by the scene, right? Like watching, seeing Leia in such a compromising position, and of course, like her capture being done by Jabba the Hutt, which is a very icky, gross character, right?
Mhm.
So as a kid, it was really uncomfortable because at this point in my life, obviously, I have not seen a lot of sexualization in media, right? So Leia in Jabba's palace is one of the first instances where I'm watching a very intentional sexualization of a character that I'm familiar with. And it's not purely sexual because there's also the sort of like shameful compromising position angle as well, with her being like captured by Jabba the Hutt or whatever. So it was really weird as a kid. It made me feel very uncomfortable. It wasn't even like I was like, oh, this is my first celebrity crush. Like I was uncomfortable by it. But also, I think the big thing, and of course I haven't watched the original Star Wars trilogy in a while, but I think a lot of people are justifiably upset. I know that I think our friends over at Mojo cited as exploitative, the unnecessary or cheap exploit of a strong female character, which is there's 100% a case to argue for that. But in A New Hope, Leia is so she's so like pure. You know what I mean? She kind of represents this like not naive but very innocent hope put into the resistance, put into victory, and put into, the perseverance of justice and hope. She wears a white gown that covers her entire body. She dresses very modestly. She speaks very, I guess, proper. And so Leia is a very pure character, a representation of that hope. And so seeing that character go from that sort of model of the resistance into a compromising and sexualized position, narratively, yeah, you can make a pretty strong argument for that being integral to not only her as a character, but also sort of like this sort of challenge for her to overcome. Because if I remember correctly, she does kind of like get back at Jabba before
Right.
doesn't she choke him out?
She chokes him with her own chain.
Yeah, right. So that's literally like this representation of her breaking free from physically that ensnarement, but also like from whatever maybe metaphorical struggles she had. So I definitely see a bigger argument for this. I mean, it's a movie that I've seen. I haven't seen The Fifth Element, but also at the same time, I get that. Also, they were like, oh, let's put Leia in a bikini because she'll look hot. Like I can kind of see
Right.
both arguments for and against this specific one.
Right, I can too, because this is the third movie, and you have to imagine that the fanboys were already kind of, lusting after Carrie Fisher.
Ew.
Maybe this is some kind of fantasy fulfillment thing. I mean, and this is like that palace scene is like the only sexy scene in all of the original trilogy. Am I right?
Yeah, if I remember
So-
correctly, it's pretty much like the only instance where something like that is so blatant or intentional.
So it definitely stands out like a sore thumb.
Yes,
But at the same time, it kind of narratively makes sense. It can be seen as like fan service, but it could also be seen as like she goes ahead and subverts that by
Yeah.
overcoming her captor, and it's kind of empowering in that way.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
yeah, that's the thing. Is like you can make the argument for that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I really do. Like I don't want to admit it, but at the end of the day, I think it really was just like, hey, let's put Carrie Fisher in a bikini for this movie.
Let's consider this too. George Lucas made sure that Carrie Fisher didn't wear a bra because they don't wear bras in space.
That's fucking what the fuck? Is that really his justification?
Yes. Apparently there was some sort of debate on set about her outfit, and he just said, nope, they don't wear bras in space, so no bra for you.
What the fuck? That's fucked up, man. That's like that's creepy.
So maybe that sways us a little more towards needlessly sexy.
I didn't take George. Yeah, probably. As much as I want to like make it narratively work, man, hearing that little anecdote kind of changes things a bit for me.
All right, well, let's move on to my favorite movie of all time, Watchmen, and let's talk about Silk Spectre, both 1 and 2. So,
Okay.
Watch Mojo says, Watchmen may have a blue man who constantly walks around in the nude, but somehow it's his girlfriend who comes off as the most overly sexualized. Even by superheroine standards, Laurie Jupiter's black and yellow leather ensemble feels like overkill, emphasizing her legs, behind, and hourglass figure. Granted, she still wears more than Dr. Manhattan, except when she doesn't. The most infamous moment in Zack Snyder's adaptation finds Spectre and Night Owl aboard the Owl ship, igniting the flames of passion, quite literally. The scene is played in super slow motion, and the song Hallelujah only makes it feel more drawn out. Night Owl is pointlessly sexualized here, but let's be honest. This moment primarily exists to see Spectre strip down.
Hold on. Hold on. Is Watch Mojo arguing that she is pointlessly sexualized during a sex scene?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so before we get into the outfit, Watchmen is one of my favorite books of all time.
Right.
And so I love it. I love it a lot. And I don't know. I've never seen the movie, but I do love.
Oh my god.
I do.
No.
It is like my favorite graphic novel of all time. So I will say this about it. If I remember correctly, that scene where Night Owl and Silk Spectre have sex in the Owl ship, it's played out to where it's just like that is like the only context in which Night Owl can sexually perform.
Right.
He feels kind of like stunted or
he's impotent.
Impotent when he's not in costume, when he's not out Night Owl.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like a lot of like the sort of like exploration behind superheroes and subverting superheroes and understanding superheroes as a genre in the graphic novel is viewing them through all these lenses, sexually being one of them. I can't say much for her outfit, and you know maybe her outfit is also a testament and a commentary on women superheroes tending to be significantly more sexualized than men.
Right.
That seems like something Alan Moore would think about and make intentional, because every panel of that fucking graphic novel is intentional. And so as for that scene, it's like, yeah, they're sexualized superheroes because like that's when they can have it. But as for her outfit, this actually is by no means the worst outfit that I've seen.
Right. It does look like kind of a dominatrix thing going on, though the amount of skin is not shown very much. It's mostly
this
latex.
Is kind of like a lot of this. I feel like a lot of this outfit is like what's kind of like implied, right? Because like the black parts of her outfit form the curves, but like the tops, like her thighs are the only thing that's showing. She's actually she almost has completely full coverage.
Mm-hmm.
But of course that doesn't, not a lot of skin showing. By no means doesn't that mean that she's not being sexualized. But
right.
In terms of egregious offenses for sexualization of female superheroes, this one's actually not too bad.
Well, let's consider a few things. I had to jump in here as the internal Watchmen defender that I am.
Yeah, no,
when I saw that they were taking shots at my favorite movie.
You said I will blindly praise without criticism my favorite IPs.
Yes, I will defend this to the death. So first of all, they acknowledge they literally have a naked man in this movie who has a ton of screen time with his cock and balls and his ass hanging out. All right.
Hold on, are Dr. Manhattan's cock and balls out in the movie?
Yes.
Okay, because I know they're out in the comic book. I just didn't know if they had them like smooth down there like a Ken doll in the
There's
Zack
full
Snyder.
male nudity, and it's not really obviously in a sexual way. I mean, he does have sex scenes too, but he's just straight up naked. He's the most naked character. So
he's the most naked character
of all the characters in that movie. He is the most naked. Yes. So it kind of seems unfair to point at somebody else and say they're the one that's over sexualized, and obviously, this is based off a graphic novel, so it's not like the movie, Zack Snyder created this and made this up.
Yeah.
But whatever, that's beyond the point, I suppose. And then this is super satirical story. So
Yes.
these costumes are obviously just like parroting and satirizing things that have already come before. Like the
Yes.
1940s Spectre is like very of the time, like pin-up sexy. And then the 80s one is kind of like edgy latex S&M kind of look.
Yeah, I think that's Alan Moore just commentating on those trends of the time.
Hmm. And the sex scene is like super relevant to the story. It's not just fan service because,
Yeah.
as you said, it's all about Night Owl's character arc. Like he and Lori try to have sex earlier in the movie, and he just can't get it up unless he's
Nope.
like feels like a hero, you know. And I guess you could argue like that's just using her as a plot point for another character. But I mean,
Ah.
she's also like, you know, dealing with her thing as being Dr. Manhattan's girlfriend, and she feels like there's no human connection there, and he doesn't love her. And, you know, she goes to an old friend, and she wants to feel a real human personal connection.
Yeah.
And, you know, she
John
gets that.
Offerman is no more. He's
Right.
not. He's not a he's not a guy. He's not a guy anymore. He's an omnipotent being. Also, this is before we leave the topic of Watchmen, because I love Watchmen, and even though this is not the point of our conversation, I do have this little thing to add. I have never seen Zack Snyder's adaptation of Watchmen. Right? I have read the graphic novel very thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
Ozymandias, right? At the end of the movie, does he nuke New York City?
Yeah, and a bunch of other locations like Hong Kong and so on, San Francisco.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. I wish that Zack Snyder would have stuck with the alien invasion.
With the squid, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so important because Ozymandias is uniting humanity through a common threat.
Mm-hmm.
The fuck kind of common threat is a bomb? Anyways, that's it.
Well,
That's all I wanted to say.
in the movie, the common threat is Dr. Manhattan. He makes it seem like he did it.
Oh, okay.
And then Dr. Manhattan has to flee off to Jupiter or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's very confusing if you've only watched the movie and then you watch the sequel series, because the sequel series is a sequel to the graphic novel. So they just assume that the squid thing happened, and that would make no sense if you've only ever seen the movie.
Yeah, that's got to be weird for movie-only watchers.
All right, let's move on to video games. These are a couple of my hand-picked entries here. First up, we have Quiet from Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Have you played this one, Mel?
I played the one shot,
The Ground Zeroes
demo. Yeah,
Does Quiet appear in that game?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, so obviously you see Quiet on screen here. She looks like a sexy version of a soldier costume, something you'd get at a cheap knockoff Halloween store.
Okay.
And obviously when the trailer started coming out and she started being revealed, people were a little questionable about, you know, what use is a soldier being dressed like this. So in September of 2013, Kojima stated, "I know there's people concerning about Quiet, but don't worry. Once you recognize the secret reason for her exposure, you will feel ashamed of your words and deeds." So Hideo Kojima, creator of Metal Gear Solid, he's saying, don't worry guys, she might be sexy, but she's sexy for a good reason. And once you guys figure it out, you're going to be ashamed you ever even made a fuss about it. There's a narrative reason to why she's so sexy. Right? And what is that reason? Well, it's because she breathes through her skin.
Okay. Why? Why does she do that?
She has a parasite, which kind of, after being burned alive, kind of Darth Vader style.
Oh, wow.
She got this parasite to kind of reaffirm her body. And now she has special superhuman powers, and one of those is that she breathes and she drinks through her skin. So if she wore too much clothes, she would suffocate.
Okay.
That's right. There's a reason, guys. All right, she has to be nearly naked.
Does anybody else have this parasite, or is it just her?
Other people do, but it doesn't affect them quite the same way. She also is called Quiet because she's not allowed to speak, because it's like a vocal cord parasite that kills you if you speak English. Or it's a very convoluted story.
Okay, hold on. So other people have the parasite, but it doesn't affect her in that way.
Like they don't also breathe through their skin.
Then what's okay? Okay, if it's unique to her, then I feel like that's just kind of a cop out, right?
That's just her superpower.
A couple
you know?
people have this parasite, but it just affects her in a way that she can't wear clothes or else she won't breathe.
Well, in the beginning of the game, she attacks the main character in a hospital, and she gets set on fire, and she has to be reconstituted using this parasite, and her body is basically, made up of this parasite now. I don't know. So that's why her skin is now her breathing apparatus.
I mean, whatever. Like, what am I supposed to say?
And she's a sniper, all right? So if she doesn't have to breathe with her lungs, she can have perfect aim.
Oh my god.
And she doesn't have to drink water or anything. She can just lay there out in the sun, half naked. Not a problem. All right, everybody's just being too stingy about this. Kojima, he had it right. What can I say?
I mean, yeah, they have a lot of preventative measures for criticism. They thought of everything.
Yeah, basically, it's like he wanted to make a super sexy character, but then he was like, I need a reason to why she's so sexy.
Yeah.
So at least nobody can point to me like I'm some kind of weird pervert, even though that's never stopped Kojima in the past.
No, not once.
But suddenly,
I don't even know why why they even bothered trying to hide it.
Maybe he felt better like if I give her a narrative reason to be, not clothed, then checkmate. And there's also like a whole scene, like an extended shower scene with her.
Oh, really?
This game is like pretty goofy too, so it's kind of played for laughs, and it's a Japanese game, you know how it is. But yeah, she drinks through her skin, so she has to like go and take a shower with the protagonist.
I'm not a prude, okay? I want it to be known. I'm not a prude. I play video games with sexy people in it.
Mm.
But we need to be honest with ourselves. All we got to say is, hey, listen, we kind of wanted this character specifically to be a little sexy. But no, it wasn't enough. Kojima said, you guys are going to regret the words that came out of your mouth, because actually the reason that she walks around almost completely naked is because she was in a horrible, traumatic accident where the only way to save her was to have her breathe through her skin, which must be exposed. By the way, breathable fabrics, by the way. I own a lot of clothes that I would, if I put over my face, I wouldn't suffocate. People wear ski masks and those go over your. I just think that maybe, and this is just a theory, I think that maybe they're full of shit. Maybe, possibly.
Maybe, yeah.
And I'm not criticizing the character design. That's fine.
Nah, she looks cool.
Yeah, she looks badass. Snipers are by far the coolest part of any game with guns. Okay, breathing through skin, whatever, that's a cool thing. But let's not use it as justification. Come on. I mean, couldn't she just have a dedicated shirt where the entire is entirely open, like open back? Everything else is covered?
She's also got a drink through her skin. Like she's got to take moisture out of the air. Any kind of fabric is gonna inhibit.
Oh my
that.
dude, you keep drip feeding me information about this. We got 10 minutes into this conversation. You're like, oh yeah, by the way, she exclusively has a shower scene.
Well, do yourself a favor and play the game. Then you'll
I'm
understand
about
all
to.
the deep
I'm downloading
Kojima
it right
lore.
now.
I think Kojima could have easily just said this character's going to be sexy, but he's just done it too many times to where people are going to start criticizing him, I think. So he had to come up with a narrative reason to why she doesn't wear clothes. And he thought maybe this will soften the blow.
He is a goofy guy,
Mm-hmm.
so this kind of goofy explanation is like super like in character. And I'm like, if it was anybody else, I'd be like, go fuck yourself. Like, what do you think you're doing? You're not fooling nobody. But where it is Kojima, I'm like, dude, I gotta give it to him. That's Kojima, man. that honestly, like, I would not be surprised. Like, just because it's Kojima, I wouldn't be surprised if like that was just like his plan from the beginning.
Just make controversy.
No. Just like that was like it wasn't like, oh fuck, I have to find a reason this character is sexy. It's just like he actually just straight up that was his plan from the beginning.
He really did just come up with the idea first and then
design
the character.
I mean,
out
listen,
that.
I think it's kind of bullshit, but like, if anybody gets the benefit of the doubt, it's probably Kojima.
Now, what if this character was dressed like this, but she used her seduction as like part of her power.
What kind of... What?
For infiltrating and interrogating.
That's an entirely different situation.
Right, but I'm saying he came up with such a weird explanation for her appearance.
I feel like if her power was seduction, there'd be no reason for that entire convoluted explanation to exist.
Exactly. So I'm saying, why did he go there then? Why did he go to the biological, she needs to breathe through her skin explanation, rather than just making her like a femme fatale?
Probably because it's kind of like cool sci-fi shit.
That's true, yeah. It is a cool explanation,
No, yeah,
to be fair,
to be fair, all credit, the explanation's pretty cool.
And narratively, with this parasite is a big part of the game. It doesn't seem to affect other people quite in this way.
See, that's where it gets me, is that like she's the only person the parasite affects in such a nature.
All right, let's move on to another controversial, sexy character. This is Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village.
Is she controversial?
Yes, absolutely.
What the fuck? I thought she was universally loved.
Well, yes. I mean that that's almost that leads into the controversy. Let me get into it.
You're telling me two different things.
Mm-hmm. She is universally loved.
I'll let you explain.
But because of that, she kind of dominated the marketing for this game, and they really front-loaded the marketing with Lady D, right? Knowingly.
Oh, okay.
She's not she's not the main antagonist. You kill her in like the first 3 hours of the game. But they decided that she was going to be the face of the marketing, which, good move.
Yeah, I will say when this game first came out, a lot of people were kind of under the impression that she was like the main villain of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand why there would be criticism there. They're like, man, you guys like years back. So I used to love when I was younger, and this is the only demographic that gets any enjoyment out of the show. But I used to watch American Horror Story when I was in middle school,
right?
And the beginning of high school. Show sucks. It's always sucked. I remember waking up one day and just realizing that felt like shit. I was like, wow, I sunk a lot of time into this show for it to always have sucked, and I just didn't realize it. That's a whole other conversation, though. We don't even get into that. Point is, Freak Show.
Right.
Season 4 of American Horror Story. The marketing leading up to Freak Show, they marketed the clown as like the main antagonist of the season. Like
Twisty.
Every bit of promotional material was the clown.
Mm-hmm. He
was really hyped up. Like that was the big baddie. And then he dies in like episode 3.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what the fuck? It's like, I felt lied to.
Yeah, they love to do that in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, why wouldn't they? They want to sell you the most appealing thing, even if it's not really indicative of the final product.
So what is controversial about her sex appeal?
Just the fact that it exists, maybe.
So maybe the fact that it was used so heavily as a marketing tool, because they knew that, a 10-foot tall vampire, goth vampire would be
very appealing.
I kind of don't have a problem with this. I understand that the advertising is kind of a little misleading by omission. It's like, yeah, sure, she's in the game, but she's just like the first of many bosses. And there is criticism to be had there, similar to my criticism with American Horror Story, because it's frustrating. It's like, oh, what the fuck? This isn't what I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. I feel like you misled me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's a pretty considerable part of the game.
Right.
And I feel like using her kind of like as almost like a mascot for the marketing, that only makes sense. She's a very appealing character.
She's a lot more interesting than Mother Miranda.
God, right? But honestly, not only like in sex appeal. Like obviously that's a big part of it. People were, more kind of like NSFW cosplayers were cosplaying her. People were doing fan art of her. I saw a lot of weird fan art of her. Like I get it. It makes so much sense to make her, because obviously you don't want to give away too much in the marketing as sort of the end game. Because like for example, in Resident Evil 4. So I think that in the promotional material for Resident Evil Village, you use like the first boss as your main promotional material, and the rest of the game is a surprise. You reel people in with something they're going to see pretty quickly. And then you can kind of feed the rest of the game as blindly as possible. So I actually think this is like actually the smart way to do it, not only for marketing but for consumer as well.
So it's a good idea to front load the marketing with like the early game stuff to keep the late game stuff a surprise.
Yes.
I mean, I understand why they did it, why they used her. It makes sense.
Yes. Completely.
They had to know what they were doing. But why is her character designed like this?
I mean, to be fair, it's not like her design is overtly fueled by sex appeal. Like, obviously, there are parts about her design and parts about maybe her mannerisms or speech patterns that, are intentionally, like, attractive, right?
Right.
But also, I feel like there's only so much control over that they had over that. Like, because the audience ran with it.
That's true.
The audience really did run with it.
She is meant to be very proper and dominating on her own, and she's very busty, and now she's not like super revealing or anything. She's wearing a nice white dress and a gigantic hat, and she looks more attractive than she does scary. And I love this character. I'm not complaining at all. I think this is fucking great.
No,
but
she's
it's
a
just
great
like,
character.
why did they decide that one of our main antagonists should be a giant, tall, sexy vampire lady?
I like it. I mean, listen, I've played a lot of Resident Evil games. That's actually pretty subversive for the series.
So, well, let's read into it a little bit.
Okay.
So, following the initial previews of Village, Lady Dimitrescu rose in popularity and has become subject to a significant amount of fan-driven labor, including fan art, cosplay, memes, and erotica.
Nice.
Journalists and commentators took note of the trend, which began before the release of Village in May 21, attributing the rapid surge of fan interest in the character to various aspects of her appearance and sex appeal. She stands at 9 foot 6 inches, taking into consideration her hat and high heels, as Capcom wanted to avoid typical gothic imagery associated with past Resident Evil games, as well as the horror genre as a whole. The Dimitrescu women's visual design referenced fashion trends from the 1930s era instead. So they did draw from a different source to make a vampire antagonist.
Yeah, and I like that because vampires are like so gothic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to kind of like sort of subvert that in terms of fashion, and like mannerisms and behavior as well. But like I said, like this like makes sense to me. I mean, Resident Evil is full of gross, disgusting, parasitic, rotting antagonists.
Right.
You know, are they the Bakers? Is that the name? The Baker family in Resident Evil 7. Like they're like kind of like walking corpses. They're like rotting. In Resident Evil 4, the people are all sickly, infected with the parasite. So like having a antagonist that is a conventionally attractive 10-foot tall vampire lady, like that's actually like pretty different for the games. So it's actually a nice subversive switch up to what they typically do.
I agree, and I think she's great. But Capcom had to know what they were doing.
No, yeah, 100%. Like they knew what they were doing, but they could only do so much because the audience really, really, honestly, in this case, you kind of like plant the seed, and the audience does all the heavy lifting. It's the same thing with marketing. You plant the seed in people's heads. In this case, it's hot vampire lady, and they do the rest of the marketing for you by making fan art, by doing cosplays, by making memes, by making porn. You know?
And you're arguing if they had fronted the game with some other character, they wouldn't have been quite as successful.
Exactly, because honestly, that's probably initially that sort of like campaign is probably what drew a lot of people into the game. They were very sex sells, and they were very interested in this attractive, dominatrix-esque vampire lady.
Right. So certain commentators have suggested that some of the fan interest in the character is erotic or sexual in nature, specifically feminine dominance.
Yeah, of course. She's 10 feet tall. I mean, giant, like abnormally large women, already an established fetish in society. Don't pretend like you've never heard of it. So we have a cool vampire. First of all, vampires are already sexy. That's just sexy in general. You've seen Interview with the Vampire? Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise are both sexy as fuck in that movie. Antonio Banderas in that movie? Jesus Christ, come on. Vampires are sexy. She's also dominating. inspired by, you know, a dominatrix women, that kind of sort of like fetish, that interest. Now, how can we make her even more dominating over us? Let's make her 10 feet tall.
Mm.
I mean, come on. That's just the hottest shit imaginable.
Let's give her a torture dungeon and have her suck your blood.
Exactly!
It does make sense. You know, Capcom was right to do what they done. It seems a little out of left field to have a sexy villain Resident Evil, but you know what? Damn it. We love her.
Not even the sexiest character in that game. That goes to the Duke.
That's true. I mean, where's all
guy.
the eroticism around him?
Yeah, dude, I mean, come on. The Duke's just so nice.
All right, next up, we have Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite. Have you played this one?
Yeah, I have.
So this is an example of a character that was too sexy, became less sexy, and then later again became more sexy. So in early reveals and the beta of this game, she was a bit more suggestively dressed. You can see from this screenshot from the trailer here, cleavage on display. She's wearing this corset, very prominent boobage going on there. And somewhere along the line between then and the release of the full game, they decided maybe we don't want to lean into that aspect of her character, which makes sense because it's not relevant at all. And it would, in that case, seem totally needless.
Yeah, I can understand maybe dialing it back a bit.
Uh-huh. Like, I mean, Elizabeth being sexy is just not part of her character, right? It would seem like total just needless fan service if she was sexy. Like, in the actual game, like, she's more, much more conservatively dressed. And she's meant to be 19 years old as well.
Oh, fuck yeah. I forgot how young she was supposed to be. I don't know why I thought she was a grown-ass adult. No, listen, I know that 19 is like, I know that that's very much like legal adult. I can understand why they would want to dial it back a bit.
Right, she's not like a seductive character. She's not like a dominant, you know, hard-headed, strong, confident character even, really.
And and you don't have to be those things to like also be sexy in the because I'm very much kind of in the school of thought that like you don't need a narrative applicable justification for the way a character looks a lot of the time. Like, for example, if your character is like very attractive, sexy, you don't need to like have that be like, oh, she's sexy because X, Y, and Z plot points. But I also, inversely, to argue my own point, I think that art is always intentional, right? How you design a character, what they wear, what they look like, how they act, and how they behave, like it's all. If you're making good art, it's always intentional, you know?
Right. You want people to be able to look at your character and infer certain things about their personality based on how they look.
Exactly. And so, although I do think you don't always need to justify it, I do think that you have a stronger case for your art if you can. Like, for example, that meme where it's just like, that, you know, that stupid fucking meme that like circulates like Facebook and Twitter where it's just like, where it kind of makes fun of like English teachers being like, the curtains were blue for this reason, and then it's like, no, they were just blue because they were blue. That's fucking bullshit. In art and in writing, things are the way they are for intentional reasons. So where I don't think you have to justify making a character sexy or making a character look like this or wear that, I think it's better if you do. Going back to the Duke, for example, right? The Duke is a massive man. Huge, right? But the Duke is also like the only sense of comfort in that entire game. And a lot of the time, people tend to associate bigger characters with comfort.
He's very jolly.
Yeah, he's very jovial. He, like you said, he's jolly. He's very big. And so the Duke's design being that massive big guy, like, is kind of plays into him being a comforting, jolly character. And I just don't think that would be reflected nearly as well if he was just like super skinny or just like even, you know, like the size of any average person. I don't know. I know I'm like arguing with myself here. You don't need to have the justification for it being sexy, but it's better if you think it through. Like, for example, Elizabeth, it makes more sense if she is not heavily relied on sex appeal because she is a scared 19-year-old.
Right.
it'd be weird if they also emphasized her sex appeal.
Yeah, I agree. You don't have to like come up with a justification just to make a character sexy, but it should be consistent, I think, with their characters. There should be some kind of reason for it,
Yes.
I think, or just like taking a character that's perfectly fine the way they are, or it really has no reason to be sexualized and just, sexing them up for no good reason doesn't really make sense. Just for visual appeal or for attracting an audience or such like that. I don't know. It just strikes me as being weird.
Yes. I agree.
And Elizabeth, she's like a super deep and interesting character. You spend like the whole game with her, and it really doesn't make sense for her tits to be hanging out the whole time. I don't know. Just me. But then we get to the DLC, Burial at Sea, and Elizabeth once again finds her sexiness. And in this one, she's reimagined as a femme fatale, kind of mysterious, seductive, gumshoe detective woman. That kind of trope. This whole DLC, the narrative of it is very noir inspired. So she plays that character in this one. So this is a case of her going from sexy to less sexy to then once again more sexy. And I don't know if that was driven by fan demand, because of course they still ran with Elizabeth being sexy,
Yeah.
in all of their little side content and fan art and cosplay, which is great and fine and whatever. And did the BioShock creators kind of lean into that with that DLC, or was this always the plan for her, that she would be reimagined this way? It's just kind of an interesting case of this character.
Yeah, it's interesting to see them go back on it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And
I just don't know why.
This is a different universe version of her. And this is like a non-canonical story.
I mean, I guess that could be your entire justification. This is just a different version of her. That's it. That's all you really need to say.
Because BioShock multiverse, it all goes together quite well. So
yeah,
and I think this is a great version of the character. There's nothing really wrong with it to have a separate, more sexy, seductive version of her in this style. I think it's very fitting.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
So there are right ways to do it, and I think the initial approach of just having her dress sexy for no real reason, not the good way to do it.
It's very it's very immersion breaking.
Yeah, it could be. So I picked that last one because I didn't want to pick on the Japanese the whole time, because I could have made an entire list of just Japanese video game characters that are too sexy.
That's fair.
And I also don't just want to pick on women. We're just going to do a little quick roundup of a couple sexy men. And you touched on Leon before.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about how sexy Leon is?
I would love to. He's very sexy. And
is it justified?
Here's the thing. Yeah, here's the thing. He's just like, Leon is very much like cool, badass American action hero.
Yeah.
Right? He is infallible. He's a huge himbo. Like, he's never had a single like negative thought. He hates the bad guys. He like unabashedly and uncompromisingly supports the good guys.
Right.
He does cool flips and shit when chainsaws burst through the door.
He drops one-liners.
So many one-liners at the worst times. Like, he is just very cut and dry, attractive action hero.
Mm-hmm.
Like, borderline self-insert. Because he's so, I love Leon. He's so bland. He's a very black and white character. I mean, he has no moral ambiguity at all. He blindly follows orders, but he's cool because he saves the day.
Right.
And he never fails. And even when he does fail, he picks himself right back up because he doesn't give up. And that's why Leon is so cool and so inspiring and so fun to play as a character. Sometimes you don't need somebody that's emotionally complicated, complex.
Mm.
Sometimes you just need a guy who, no matter what he's faced with, gets the fucking job done.
That's Leon.
Geralt, much more emotionally complex, but also like a really cool character. If we want to like get into like the whole justification area, Witchers, they have no emotion. They actually do. Geralt fucks, right?
Oh yeah.
But a lot of people according to the rumors, would be like, oh yeah, witches, they don't feel anything. They're just emotionless, hollow husks that kill things. But no, they love, they cry, they fuck. Geralt is also just a really cool character too.
Yeah, he's got that rugged silver fox thing going on.
Yeah, right? I don't know. It's just like, the thing is like, Leon, he's cool. Geralt, he's cool. Hot Vampire, she's cool. And so it's just like, this is gonna sound really hollow and really kind of like whatever. But like, sometimes I just like when a character is just cool. Like Leon is, like I said, he's this cool badass action hero. Lady D is a cool tall, hot vampire lady.
Of course, you don't want your character to be lame and frumpy.
Yeah, and I
Right?
mean, sometimes
People are not going to want to play your game or relate to your character quite as much.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it is fun when characters are kind of like lame and weird and shit. And sometimes I like playing as those characters. I think it's a nice change of pace because there's 100 Leons out there. There's 1,000 Leons out there.
There's only one Frank West.
Exactly. And so I don't always want to be playing as this like cool, hot, sexy action hero guy, but sometimes I do. And yeah, and sometimes I think that maybe we can get a little too far off the deep end with making our male protagonists infallible and perfect. There is a line to be drawn in the sand there, but I think it just depends on what you want out of your character, what you want out of your game.
On that note, this has been Needlessly Sexy Characters. Were they too sexy? Is their sexiness justified? You be the judge.
Wow, you kind of sounded like the Dragon Ball outro a little bit. That was really cool. For those of you who are listening, I am wearing pants. That was your I know I kind of teased it at the beginning. Yeah, so I am not needlessly sexualized this episode, but next episode I might be. I might show up in a skimpy little number, and it'll be a whole thing.
We'll be sure to catch that next Tuesday on the next episode of The Long Couch. Bye.